suddenly couldn't see anything. So I lost my vision and I couldn't remember. And this is the thing that sticks so clearly in my mind. I couldn't remember the name of the sausage roll. I knew it was a tube of meat with pastry, but I couldn't remember the words sausage roll. And what was essentially happening was because the pre-eclampsia that I apparently had kind of developed, I was basically having a form of a mini stroke.
Every L podcast. Every L podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Matt Brown, and you're listening to the
Every L podcast.
Each episode, we'll have a different guest come on and talk about when life hands you an L, is it really a loss or is it something else?
Because not every L's a loss.
So sit back, relax, and do whatever you guys do to get comfortable as we get into this. Let's go. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Every L podcast. Today, I'm so happy to have a fantastic individual who I met through a dad's group that I'm part of, Music Football Fatherhood. Selfish plug there. And she is just so whimsical. She's knowledgeable. I swear, if we could talk, we'd probably talk for hours. Not that we have been already. But we've just had a great conversation in the past. We had a great conversation just before we jumped on. And I'm just so excited to have her because she's so infectious. She's so energetic. I'm assuming it's coffee induced, but it's pretty late in the night. So if that's the case, I don't think she's going to sleep at all tonight. But yes, her name is Hannah. She's a teacher, English teacher. So I'm going to stumble over words during this episode. A whole heap of editing is going to happen because I've already done it. I've tripped over my words several times. But I'm so happy for her to be on and share her stories. She has given us 2 L's she'd like to discuss, but what I'm going to first do is ask her to introduce herself in the way that she sees fit and divulge what she feels comfortable divulging at this stage. So over to you.
Thank you. I feel like I'm going to let you down now because that was so lovely. That made me feel really special. Thank you very much.
You're
I mean,
welcome.
in the good kind of special. That was lovely. I am an English teacher. I'm not going to. This is a big thing. It's a big misnomer. Everybody assumes that English teachers are looking for when you're saying the wrong thing or looking for when you're writing the wrong thing. It's quite the opposite because we don't tell people how often we do that. I'm one of those people who goes through life making mistakes and they're having to apologize for those mistakes. And I have the gift with my students of being honest with them and saying, I don't know the answer to that. We're going to look it up together. There is nothing worse than being caught out by a really bright student who sees that you said something wrong. So it's always best to admit when you don't know something. I am shameless when it comes to that. Absolutely.
I think I'd love to have a teacher like you.
It is, I think it's important to do because otherwise we're scared of teachers. If teachers say they know everything, there's a responsibility you hold then as well. And I don't want that. I don't want to be responsible for knowing everything because if I give the wrong information, it comes back on me. So
Yeah.
it's not just sharing with the kids. It's also stopping myself from getting sued, which.
Especially when they've got Google in their hands.
And they've got Google in their hands and their phone is physically attached to them, literally attached to them, which is good because it means, somebody will say something. I'll say, yeah, okay, Google that because I have no clue. Google my spelling on this. My spelling is atrocious. I'm an English teacher who can't spell.
Grammarly.
And I have certain words that just can't get them no matter how. For the last 13 years, I've spelled the word sacrilege wrong every time I've written it on the board.
Wow.
That's 13 years that I've had to write the word sacrilege when we're doing Shakespeare.
So
And
think
I
about
write
all
the
the
word on the
people
board
that
and
have
go, is
now.
that right? Is that right? Check it. And one year I've got it right. In 14 years now, I've got it right. And we had like such a big celebration. And I screamed really loudly and another teacher came out of the classroom to check we were okay. I was just screamed sacrilege at the top of my voice. But that's, that I think honesty is the best policy with young people because they will find you if you're lying. They will find you, they
Yep.
will see you, and they will not forget it. They have
No.
very long memories. Very long memories.
So besides being a teacher, is there anything else you're happy to share?
Yeah. I mean, we talked previously about, our children and how much they mean to us and how little they let us sleep and all of the beautiful things that makes them teeny tiny, marvelous little bundles of light and joy. They are, I think the reason we exist on the planet, realistically, we don't know what else we're here for. We don't know. We're sure we're supposed to be doing something, but the only thing we know we get right is making teeny tiny humans. And, however they come into your world, they're just so damn wonderful. And my daughter is, she is, as I've mentioned before to you, she's precocious. She's
Like her mum.
she is, yeah. She is. She's the kind of good precocious, though. She's a healthy precocious. She's a very, very happy, very energetic, very positive little figure.
You
And
sound quite envious when you say that.
I do, because she's just so unendingly sunny. And I think, having personally as an adult and as a young woman gone through some enormous periods of neuroses and periods of depression and periods of great sadness, she is eternally sunny. She is a child who just does not get impacted by the negative aspects of the world in the same way. She sees a way to be happy in everything. And I believe that's probably, she came into the world in a very difficult way. And I think that's what's kind of, she's overcompensating for that. My husband and I, we married later on in our 30s, and it took us 2.5 years to conceive. So I discovered through the whole incredibly uncomfortable process of being probed by many, many different doctors. And women will tell you this. It's quite unfortunate that how the men get checked is much more enjoyable, if somewhat embarrassing. How the women get checked is so invasive. And you'll go into a doctor's surgery and someone will, jam a wand into you. Then they'll turn a screen towards you, show you your ovaries. And you're like, okay, thanks. What do you say when someone shows you your ovaries? You're just like, okay, good. I had no clue they look like that, but please take them away. Just take the wand out, turn the screen around. Let's get out of here while we can. We discovered I had endometriosis, so there were lots of unpleasant invasive surgeries before we managed to conceive. A lot of unpleasant hormonal treatments and drugs we had to take. And eventually we found out we were pregnant just as we were starting to look into adoption. So it was a real, one of those moments where all the lights were on. It was 4:00 in the morning and I'm holding this little white pea stick under my husband's nose. And God bless him, he was fast asleep. So it was a terrible thing to wake up to.
Wow.
But I had woken up that morning and somehow, I don't know why, I'd known I was pregnant. I just knew. And I leapt on him with this pea stick right under his nose. And the poor man was sort of confronted with this, vile smelling white object. But, luckily he took it very well. And it was just the most wonderful thing for both of us. I'd been convinced up to this point that I had done something terrible in life to not deserve a child. So to know I was going to have one was just the most beautiful thing. I'd watched my friends have babies. I'd watched my sisters-in-law have my beautiful nieces and now my nephew. But I just felt this is not going to be me and it's not going to be mine. And it was breaking my heart. So to have this confirmation was just wonderful. But it didn't go as planned. And
before you go on to that, because I just want to let everyone know that obviously we haven't discussed exactly what your areas you're going to talk about.
I see.
So kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but this is what I'm talking about. People, she's turned all the way up. She's wired. She's not even running on battery power. She's plugged in.
It's pure electricity. It really is.
Like I'm telling you. So as you can hear, she's now a mother, which is fantastic news. I'm happy for anyone that's trying to be a parent and somehow it happens, whether it be adoption, IVF, natural, or anything else that could potentially make you a parent. I think it's important that people who are potentially looking at being a parent in the future or are going through something similar understand that they're not alone.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you decide to share that you wanted to talk about your expectations versus reality, becoming a preemie mum, for me, I'm not gonna lie, I Googled that preemie. I'm like,
yeah, you don't know it until it happens. That's the trouble.
All I'm saying, I almost went to Urban Dictionary at that point. I was like,
oh no, no, my God. No, my students led me there. Don't go there.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them do send you down a wrong path, and you just use words out of context, and it's like, yeah, you really don't know what you're talking about. But I think it is important the fact that it. I think that we all go through a lot in life,
Mm,
and sometimes we unpackage it in a healthy way. Sometimes, or most times, we don't.
mm.
But a lot of it is made to feel taboo. You don't talk about this because of that. You
Yeah.
don't say that because you don't want to make someone else
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Forget you.
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
want to make someone else uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you want to do some research, wait until the doctor's got time to see, which could be 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks down
Mm,
the line because of everything that's going on. But I appreciate you, and I thank you for being willing to want to share your story so that other people can understand that they're not alone going through this, that
mm,
this is potentially a reality for them that will happen in the future. But even if it
mm.
is, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bleak and it's going to be the end. Hopefully, that will be the way the
No,
conversation goes.
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, feel free to continue. I just wanted to lay it out there and just thank
Yeah.
you for being willing to share this.
I think a lot of women, there is, on the one hand, there's the expectation, you must have child, you must have child, you must have child. And, we're told, particularly growing up as I did, surrounded by women who went down exactly the same path. And, you must get married and you must have children. And, even as times changed and it didn't matter who you married, it didn't matter what gender those people were. It didn't matter, where they came from, where your relationship began, but you had to make children, you had to bring children into the world. And there was that expectation, and that weight is on women consistently. And I think we don't talk enough about the fact that it's not for everyone. It's literally not for everyone, and that also is okay.
Yeah.
And we had discussed a lot, saying that we really do, we want to be parents one way or another, and it was always going to be, if this doesn't happen naturally for us. We talked about IVF, but we talked about the cost of it, and we said, given the area that we live in, we're South Oxfordshire, so IVF for us was going to come between 4 and 7 grand around.
Wow.
And we don't have a lot of money. We live in a very rich area and we're renting. It's expensive. So we said that money would be better placed somewhere else. So we
Yeah.
could do this round of IVF, and we could not be successful. So we talked about putting that money towards looking into adoption and the process of going through adoption, and the process that would require, finding someone to help us adopt and going through the local council. And, we were told that the waiting list was enormous, and it became this whole kind of, the whole narrative that started. So I said to my husband, we got to start the process. We just begin the process. So we're going through, God love him, he came to every surgery, every appointment, and sat with me and held my hand through it and watched the screen. And we all looked at my ovaries, and nobody knew why. Nobody knew what we were looking for. The weird thing is, those nurses expect you to kind of know what you're looking at, and they go, and here's your ovary, and you go, it looks like a golf ball. I don't know what I'm looking at. And here's a filament. I don't know what a filament is, lady. Just take the wand out. But it was this whole process for both of us. And love him, he held my hand every time I came out of there crying, because we were told, you don't qualify for free IVF, and we'd be told, it's unlikely that you might conceive. And every time we got this message, there were tears. And he would bring me home and say, this isn't it. I know this isn't it for us. There is something else. There is always more. There is always something else. And he is the one who started, looking into adoption, looking into where we were going to go there. And it was literally chance, because we've kind of given up on the process of the idea of actually conceiving naturally, that it happened. And I know a lot of people will say, once we stop trying, but you can't, 2.5 years of trying to be pregnant. It's very easy for someone to say, hey, just relax and it'll happen.
Yeah.
I very nearly punched a GP who said that to me, because I was 2 years in, and 2 very unpleasant operations, and one really nasty dose of something called Clomid, that women are given to kind of, stimulate the process of being able to conceive. And it leaves you in a very uncomfortable position for a very long period of time. And when the GP said to me, just relax, I very nearly chinned him. It was a very close thing. I'm a pacifist by nature these days.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Maybe not in my youth, but certainly as an adult and as a teacher, I've become much more kind of, forgiving. But it was a close run thing. When he said, just relax. And I thought, you don't know what it feels like every day to feel like as a woman, your body is failing you and you're not doing something properly, and everyone else seems to be able to do it. And every day there'd be another announcement on social media of someone saying, hey, we're having a baby. And I would just want to drive round to their house and slap them as well, because much as I wanted to be happy for them, it just felt like the whole world was pregnant except us.
Yeah.
So when we did finally conceive, it was just like, it was Christmas, it was Easter, it was the summer holidays, it was Saturday every day, and it was wonderful. And the 6 months of morning sickness every single day was worth it. It was worth it to be in that position and to actually feel that baby kick for the first time and just go through that process. We did what most normal couples do, which is get your pregnancy book, get a pregnancy app, which tells you when your baby is the size of a grape, and when your baby is the size of a an apple, and when your baby's the size, weirdly, of a kumquat. I'd never actually seen a kumquat before, so I was quite pleased
I think
with
that's
that.
just for your location.
That was just Henley.
Yeah.
Your baby is the size of a smashed avocado with bacon. Your baby's the size of a quail's egg. It was just really
organic,
very organic quail's egg. It was a lovely thing. We did the whole kind of, the baby's the size of a banana, the baby's the size of and we got to the baby being the size of 31 weeks, and something went wrong. And I'd known something was wrong, I think, for a couple of weeks. And the first GP I spoke to was the same guy who told me to relax. So he's great. He said, you're carrying a lot more water than I would expect. And I was like, dude, the woman is peeing every 5 minutes and she is still like, I was like those water balloons you used to get as a kid in the 80s. You'd fill them up and you'd hold them at the top and then all the water would hang down. It was not right. Things were not good. The feet were getting bigger, the hands were getting bigger, everything. I just looked like the Michelin Man. And in the last couple of days, it got really weird and I couldn't sleep unless I was sitting up, and the headaches were blinding and I felt very dizzy and I started to kind of, lose focus a little bit. So I waddled over to my GP and I demanded to speak to somebody in a very Henley kind of way, because people appreciate that around here. Demanded to speak to someone. And a very lovely GP who I will be forever grateful for, said, okay, I'm just going to write you a note and I'm going to send you down to Royal Box, and just go along, just for me, nothing to worry about, just humour me, just for me. Go on, off you go, off you pop. So I waddled down to, luckily my husband works just around the corner from where we live. So I waddled down to our workplace and I barked at the receptionist to bring him out at once as tribute. And he drove me down to Royal Box, and within, I think, about the first 10 minutes, they sat us down and they got me a sausage roll and some crisps and a bottle of pop. And I was really happy. And it was all lovely because everyone was being so nice. And they said, look, just go home. And I love the way the GP and the nurses did this. There was this wonderful sense of just for us, just pop home, just in case. Just go and get your wife some overnight clothes, just in case we need to monitor her. And I will just say to all couples out there, whether you are male or female or other, whoever is the person who goes home, please pay very close attention to the person who is sending you home. Because when you come back in with completely different clothes to the clothes you've been requested, you're not going to be welcomed in. You're really not. That person who is lying there attached to many different devices and being poked and prodded by nurses is not going to be happy when you bring in swimming costume bottoms instead of a proper pair of pants. And a pair of jeans that you haven't worn since before you were pregnant, and entirely the wrong colour bra. So that didn't go down well.
Can in his defense, can I
No,
just
no
say
defense, no defense,
the
no.
water buttons, if your water's broke, that would be appropriate.
It would have. Unfortunately, as I'm a sunroof deliverer, it was entirely useless. But they did have a lovely frill on them, so I mean, bless him, he'd chosen the prettiest ones, which was adorable and completely useless. It didn't help that by that point, bless him, when he came in, I was talking to him, and I remember very, very clearly the nurse saying to me, "Can you tell me what you just said?" And I thought I repeated it. And she said, "No, no. Can you tell me again what you just said?" And he said to me, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, no, I'm fine. I'm fine." So he went out of the room. When he came back in, I was connected up to many different devices. I suddenly couldn't see anything. So I lost my vision and I couldn't remember. And this is the thing that sticks so clearly in my mind. I couldn't remember the name of the sausage roll. I knew it was a tube of meat with pastry, but I couldn't remember the words sausage roll. And what was essentially happening was, because the pre-eclampsia that I apparently had kind of developed, I was basically having a form of a mini stroke. I had lost the ability, and for me, you can imagine, I'd lost the ability to speak,
Yeah.
which was terrifying. I had this big sort of fuzzy blob in my eyes. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't speak. And all of a sudden, I just remember incredibly intense activity, just a load of people around me. And I remember very, very little else for the next couple of hours. I remember Tristan sitting at the side of the bed with me, my husband sitting at the side of the bed, and saying, you really frightened me. You really frightened me. And I looked at him and he was just ashen. He was absolutely grey. And there were all these wires and tubes and beeping and lots of activity. And then a very, very nice, very pleasant, very laid back nurse came in and said, "We've decided we're going to take the baby out now." And I said, "No, thank you." Because I thought, you've got to be polite. And she said, no, we're going to take the baby out. And I said, no, thank you very much. And she said, yeah, we're going to monitor you for a couple of hours, but we've decided the baby's going to come out soon. And I said, okay, no, thank you. And she left the room. And I remember turning to my husband and saying, right, quick, get my bag. We're going out the window. Because I was 31 weeks along and I knew this couldn't be good. But I don't think I really had any sense of how not good it was.
Yeah.
Because I had never had a baby and I didn't really read the baby books and I didn't really pay attention when anyone was having babies. I just knew they were having them. And I just assumed everyone just had babies because I didn't know anyone who had had anything other than a pretty normal birth as I saw it.
Yeah.
So for somebody to say, okay, I'm sorry, Mrs. Edwards-Arnison, but baby's coming out and baby's coming out soon. It was just like, no. But I don't think it truly dawned on me how big a deal it was. And the next morning, they kept me awake all night. I wasn't allowed to sleep. And the next morning, there it was. It was a C-section. And because of the drugs they'd been giving me, I had to be sort of sedated on the gurney. And my husband was next to me. And all I remember is that they were playing, it was Ed Sheeran, Ezra, what's his name, and Taylor Swift. So my daughter came out to the strains of the whitest pop country the world has ever heard. And I just remember thinking, I hope this isn't kind of a thing for her because this isn't really my music. But it was a very middle class kind of, Royal Berks birth, and everyone was chatting over me. And I remember them lifting this tiny little thing up over the screen from my C-section. And because she screamed very, very loudly, they knew that she was breathing okay. So they placed her on my shoulder and I was able to kind of look over and just give her a little kiss on the tip of her nose. And I looked at her and I said, I know you. And then they took her away and that was it. I could hear her behind me. And I could hear my husband talking to the nurses as they dressed her up, and then she was gone. And that was it. That was the last time I saw her for, I think, a day and a night. And it was the weirdest thing in the world. And I think it took me a very long time throughout that day to stop crying because she wasn't there. And I was suddenly aware of the fact that I had no baby. She'd just disappeared and she
Yeah.
wasn't by me. And I wanted so desperately to hold this little person that I knew, and she was mine. And she was gone somewhere I couldn't get to. I was sedated from the breasts down. So, I mean, I would have had to crawl if I'd wanted to. And my husband was being exceedingly jolly in a really kind of unnatural manner.
Yeah.
And it was all very odd. I was very, very lucky that in the first couple of hours I was in the hospital, I befriended a couple of the nurses. So they swung me a single room. They didn't put me back on the ward with the other mums with their babies. They put me in the one spare single room they had. But for some reason, that kind of made it even sadder.
Yeah.
Because on the entire maternity ward, I was the only woman without a child in the room. And even to this day, thinking about it, I just feel it's still hard to remember. It's still, I have my beautiful baby. I brought my baby home, and I know there are many parents out there who don't get that luxury. So
Yeah.
to have her and bring her home is wonderful. But that moment of looking across the room, and there's no bed next to me, there's no baby next to me, there's no noise. It was just incredibly odd and very, very sad. And we were there for a month in NICU. She should have been in for 9 weeks. She denied that. She refused to stay the entire time. They sent her home in a month. She was ready to go. But it was just the longest, strangest, saddest time that I could remember, because there was no baby. There was no baby with me, and I'd have to go and see her like she wasn't mine, like she belonged to the hospital.
Yeah. You was just visiting.
I was visiting, and I would go and sit next to her, and they'd pull a curtain around for us for us preemie mums to express, which, you can either go and do in a private room or you could do next to your baby. They recommended you do it next to your baby because you're more likely to be able to produce milk if you were near your baby and you could smell your baby. But of course, we couldn't pick her up when we wanted to because she was so tiny. She was 3 pounds 9, which was, big for a preemie baby, but she looked like a tiny little pink spider monkey. And I just remember thinking, this is just not how I pictured it. This is not my pregnancy. This is not my birth. This is wrong. It felt unfair. It felt like I wanted this so much. Why is this happening like this? And you become insanely narcissistic in that moment. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
This is happening to me, and it shouldn't happen to me because I want a regular birth. I want to go back. I want to do it properly. And it was just very, very odd and very sad, and not the beautiful, joyous, loving, wonderful thing that I thought it was going to be. I pictured having the baby and everyone celebrating the birth and then coming home and being a mum.
Yeah.
And there I was sitting in this awful room full of tubes and beeps and occasionally, really traumatic moments where monitors would go off and nurses would rush in and babies would be rushed out or rushed in. And it was really the strangest, saddest place. I mean, there were moments of humour and lightness in there. I mean, I remember the first time my husband tried to change her little tiny nappy. She was too small even for the preemie nappies, so she had them folded over on the top like a little napkin.
Wow.
And I remember him taking this tiny little inch-wide nappy off her body, and she just pooped all the way up his arm. And I mean, I'm not the most mature person anyway, but my husband standing there with the poop on his arm, I dropped to the floor laughing. But there was the horror of doing that because I was in special care.
Yeah.
And you don't shriek in special care. You don't laugh in special care. Nobody laughs in special care. It's special care. It's a special care baby unit. You don't laugh in there. So there felt like there were the restrictions on our feelings as well as on our expectations, that we couldn't have fun. You couldn't even when I'd come home after about 11 days, I came home from the hospital And I was going back and forth to Reading to visit her, but we didn't want to do anything. We didn't want to, we didn't want to go out for coffee. We didn't want to walk up and down the street. We didn't want to, see friends, because it felt like we were cheating on our baby, because she was in hospital and we shouldn't enjoy ourselves. So we just spent the whole 4 months. My husband would go into work and I'd sit at home and cry. And he would come back and I'd be mad at him because he'd been around people. And I'd been wanting to go in and see her and I couldn't drive and I didn't want to get on a bus. So I'd have to wait for him to come home to go see her. But it just felt the whole time like, this is wrong. This is so wrong. And it became more normal when she came home. She came home at £4.8, still, this tiny, feisty little scrap who just immediately made everything better because she was with us. But it has made me much more paranoid, much more obsessive with her. I am that parent who's like, oh my God, is she okay? Is she okay? I'm the helicopter mum now. But she's, I thought we were okay. I thought we were doing okay. And for a long time, I really thought we were doing okay. And then I had to have a procedure called an ablation. After all the treatments I'd had before her, it caused pretty much irreparable damage. So I had to have this ablation, which is basically the removal of the interior of your uterus.
Oh gosh.
Because all of the kind of the Clomid, the laparoscopies, the C-section, it all led to all kinds of awful damage. So I had the ablation, and the ablation meant I would never have another child, which I knew because we had agreed that it was too dangerous with my history of pre-eclampsia, but also we're old and one was hard work. So, but there was, for some reason, just before her first birthday, I panicked. I had a huge panic. And in the second year, just before the ablation, it became more than just a panic, and it became a true panic attack, and I couldn't breathe. And I was lying in bed, and for some reason, despite the fact that I knew 100% that my daughter was in the bed at the end of the hall, she was sleeping, and I'd seen her that night, I knew that she was also still in the hospital in Royal Berks.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdest feeling in the world, because I'm a very logical person. I believe in what is, and I know what is. And I had seen her and I had held her that night and put her to bed. So I knew she was there in my house. I knew she wasn't still a tiny baby in a hospital. But knowing that I was going to have that procedure, for some reason, sent me into a massive spiral. And I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't want to speak to my GPs because some of them have been pretty useless. And I didn't know how to express it to my husband. And I tried to talk to my parents and I couldn't get the words out right. And the only name I could remember was Bliss. And they were the people who'd given us all the pamphlets in the Preemie wards. We had a Bliss volunteer come and speak to us.
Yeah.
And she kind of talked through all the processes with us and asked us how we were doing every day. And it was wonderful to talk to someone who just was not surprised or doing something science-y, that sort of like sciencey kind of stuff around you that nurses and doctors do. She was just there to talk to parents.
Yeah.
So I phoned the hotline and weirdly had the most wonderful hour-long conversation with a Bliss volunteer who just listened to me and listened and listened and listened. And I shouted at her and I said, it's not fair. It's not fair that I didn't get my pregnancy. It's not fair that I missed those 9 weeks. It's not fair that she was in hospital. It's not fair that I have to have this operation. It's not fair. And I'll never have another baby. And I feel sad. And she said two of the most wonderful things I've ever heard. First of all, she said, I hear you.
Yeah.
And that phrase for me was like, wow. Okay, because I've been saying things for 2 years and I don't think anyone really got me. But she said, I hear you. And you need to know having another child won't bring back the 9 weeks that you lost. It won't change where you've been.
Yeah.
It won't make better what you feel sad about. You can't replace that with another child. Having another child doesn't bring back that lost pregnancy. You need to grieve your lost pregnancy, and you need to grieve those 9 weeks, and you need to grieve the birth that you expected. Because the reality is, what you have now is great, but you have a right to be sad. And it was just like, oh, thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. I put the phone down, and literally within 2 weeks I had the procedure, and it was okay, because I knew it was okay to be sad.
Yeah.
I didn't have to find a silver lining. God love him, my father said to me when my daughter was born and I was crying in the hospital, he said, well, you've just got 9 more weeks to love her now. And I was like, just get out. Just get out of here. And I know he was trying to make me see some kind of positive, but it made me realize it's okay to not see a positive.
Yeah.
It's okay to actually just be sad that you didn't get what you wanted, and feel sad, and sit in that sadness, and appreciate that you have a right to wish that things would be different, to wish that your child had those extra 9 weeks, that you had your baby shower, that you had your,
Yeah.
your moment in the hospital as the glowing mother. And it's okay. And it was just the most empowering moment to be told, I hear what you're saying, and you are allowed to grieve. You're
Yeah.
allowed to stop feeling guilty about grieving. It was really miraculous. That one woman in the Bliss hotline, she just changed the way I viewed the last 2 years. And it was only a couple of years afterwards that my husband actually told me he'd been taken out of the room while I was having my weird sausage roll episode. I can say it now, sausage roll, sausage roll. I might keep saying sausage roll forever.
Please do.
He was sausage roll. He was taken out and told by the nurse, we're taking the baby out, because if we don't, you're going to lose your wife or your child or both. And you need to convince her, because she's in there saying no.
Yeah.
And he came in with his forced jollity, holding my hand, saying, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. And bless him, I don't think I'd really thought about the trauma that he had gone through as well.
Hearing that, especially.
And having said to him, what the Bliss volunteer has said to me, I wished I'd had the vocabulary to be able to say to him at the time, do you need to talk to somebody? Do you want to speak to somebody? Because I was so busy going, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair, that I completely forgotten it wasn't fair for him either.
Yeah.
He didn't get to have a baby shower, and he loves cupcakes. And, he didn't get to smoke his cigars and celebrate down the pub with his mates and, do whatever it is, I don't know, dads do. He didn't get to do it. He had to be okay for me, because I was not okay.
Hearing what you said, and I didn't want to interrupt because you were so eloquent in terms of what you were saying, how you presented information, your thought patterns, the processes, the emotions, that the absolute rawness of what you went through. And I can like, for me, I never thought of it that way. A pregnancy ending when it does, it's only like hearing my wife when she talks about stuff like that. Yeah, I kind of get it. But outside of that, because no one else normally talks about it, it just doesn't seem to be a thing. Just like
No.
if you don't see something on TikTok, Instagram, or
Yes.
YouTube, it doesn't exist.
Yes.
So unless someone's showing me it, I don't think people breastfeed no more. I think it's all formula, because that's what you see.
It's not what you see. We knew nothing about NICU. We knew nothing about it, because all the pregnancy books, there were 2 pages in my books about pregnancy that talked about if you have an ill baby, if you have a premature baby, if you lose your baby. 2 pages of a book about pregnancy
Gosh.
dedicated to if.
Yeah.
And And I was in a whole ward of if. I was in a ward that was, every day there were new parents coming in and going out. And there was a wall outside that was decorated with pictures of babies from NICU. They call them the Buscut babies from Reading Royal Berks.
Okay.
And the Buscut babies were basically the kids who'd come through NICU, and their parents sent pictures. So we sent a picture a couple of years ago of Hermione, as she was then,
Yeah.
to show them, and to say thank you to them, because they were wonderful, wonderful nurses. But
Good to hear.
we had no clue. Nobody preps you for not having the birth you want. Nobody tells you how to do that. I mean, for me now, the positives, not even positives, the knowledge I've taken away from it is you have to know that what you expect is not always going to be what you get. And if that's the case, it's not about being prepared for the worst, but it's about knowing that expectation is only one part of what you're going to get. It's only one part of your journey. To expect something, to hope for something, is only a tiny part of what you're going to end up with. That, that reality is going to be so many more different things, and it might be completely different to what you had in mind. So you have to expect, but you can only ever know it's a facet of the rest of what you're going to end up with. We had no clue that was going to happen to us.
But I like that fact, and it does circle back around to where you talk about expectations versus reality. I will ask you a couple of questions, though, because I
Yeah.
am very mindful that I feel that there might be a little bit of gaps that I'd like to sort of have filled, if you don't
Yeah.
mind sharing.
Yeah, sure.
And it was a matter of when you were trying to conceive and you were trying for 2 years and it was feeling a certain way. How did that make you feel as a woman?
Ugh. It doesn't help that, in my youth, I had always just kind of assumed that, it's going to be okay because I'll have a baby. It's going to be okay because one day I'll have a baby. And there is that expectation. I was not a maternal woman, but I always assumed for some reason, despite not being maternal, I would have a baby. And it was just that constant feeling that there's something wrong with me. I knew biologically speaking, and I think because I'd had problems, as a young woman, and my periods were not regular, they weren't normal, for a better sense of the word, but it's not something that GPs talk about. It's not something that GPs or schools or parents talk about with you. And there was no investigation into endometriosis. There was no discussion of that. If you complained to a GP about your menstruation, it was just, whether you spoke to a woman or a man, you were told, oh, well, that's normal. Some people get this and some people get that. Off you go. Off you go. So for decades, I could potentially have been helped. And there was nothing. There was no discussion. So on top of feeling like I was failing my obligation to society as a woman, feeling that my body was failing me, I also kind of felt like there was some kind of conspiracy, that something was wrong somewhere and nobody was doing anything about it. And my poor husband, who, literally went to these appointments with me, sat with me, talked to the GPs with me, talked to the specialists with me, and had to come out of there with me, desperate
Yeah.
and constantly upset about everything. And every time somebody got pregnant, there was just this sense of, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? What is wrong with you people? You're like animals. Where are all these babies coming from? You start to become quite bitter. You
Yeah.
stop just being desperate and sad, and you start being angry at people. And it was horrible because it became toxic for our relationship as well. Because, I'm failing you, you're potentially failing me. Well, now we know you're not failing me, so I'm the failure. And, bless him, he really he worked constantly to keep me in a frame of mind where, we were going to do something, we were going to be something, this was going to happen for us. It was such a long, long couple of years of just, maybe we try this, maybe we try that, maybe we did. But it was all we talked about. And any parent who's trying to conceive will know it's all you think about.
Yeah.
It's all you talk about. It's all you think about. And it's always in the back of every conversation. And there's this tiny part of you as a woman that's looking at your partner and thinking, is this for us? If we can't do this, what are we going to be? And, he would say to me all the time, you are enough. You're always going to be enough. And I'm very lucky that, for both of us,
Yeah.
I believed when he said that, and it was a very lovely thing to hear, but it didn't take away the fact that, for me, I wasn't sure if I was enough, and that I would be enough if I wasn't a parent.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think, we look back on it now and it seems like a million years ago, but when you're in that moment and you're there, it's something you have to deal with. You have to speak to somebody. You have to get out there and talk to somebody, because otherwise your brain will run you in circles.
That is true. And what you said there, it hit home with me because I guess I don't want to generalize, but I am a fixer. I struggle to just listen, which is very challenging when you're doing a
It's
podcast.
understandable. It's understandable for a man, though, particularly if you have, a male-female couple. You want to fix that for them,
Yeah.
and you want to fix that problem for them. And, we want to help heal the person we're with if they feel damaged in some way, if they feel hurt in some way. We want to heal that.
Yeah.
If you don't, I think it's probably not best for you to be in a relationship.
No,
Yeah, go on with it,
100%.
kid.
But the thing is, it's the part of it that really got me is the fact that even though your husband, in theory, and I'm not trying to say it's a checklist here,
No, no,
but he
no.
said all the right things.
Yes, yeah.
It
doesn't
wasn't
help.
enough.
No, no.
It was. Yes, you're saying the right things, but this is not the time to hear those
No.
things. I need my reality to be different
I
in
need
order for me
you
to.
to shift my reality so I am
Yeah,
the pregnant woman instead
and
of the desperate woman.
that's the part where,
Mhm.
for me, that's one of my takeaways. And I think I kind of knew it before, and I did say it to Ian in, I think it's the second episode, where it's a matter of there's always a villain in a story. And I
Yes.
used the analogy of that stupid, terrible, horrible movie of Superman versus Batman. That shouldn't even be a thing.
Oh, thank
And
you.
it's the fact that Superman is
Absolutely.
trying to save the world.
Yes.
And then you've got people on ground zero that have seen all the destruction happening going, oh my gosh, look at this. I don't like Superman because of this. So Superman is the hero,
Yeah.
but from that person's perspective,
He's still knocked
he's the
down the
villain.
building. Yeah.
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 And that's where, Tristan in this instance
It
has said
crosses
all the
over.
right things,
Yeah.
but you're like thinking,
But it's like, no, you still knocked over the building, mate. Yeah. Fix it.
yeah, pretty much. Pretty
And
much.
if you're not going to fix it in the way that I want, just go away.
Yeah.
Just go away. He did say all the right things, and I am eternally grateful for the patience of a man who dealt with those 2.5 years so graciously. And I'm not saying that's how somebody should be. You should not be some kind of a pillar of patience. He did manage to do that, but I think that's in who he is as an individual. But I know, for both of us, it was the most challenging thing that we've been through as a couple, because you just bounce along thinking, because we want this, it's going to be.
Yeah.
We love each other. We have done all the right things. We got married. We got a dog to practice. So, we did all the right stuff. Yeah, we got my first fur baby, Rufus. Then we got the second one, because one is never enough.
No.
And then we should be pregnant now. And where is my baby?
Yeah.
And it was just this constant, where is my baby? Why does everyone else have a baby? And everyone else doesn't have a baby, but that's not what you see. That's not what you feel. You feel like the most barren human being that ever was. Yeah. And in your heart of hearts, and that in your mind, logically, that's not true. And that this is not the be all and end all of life, and that this will in some way be resolved, either physically, through science, or through legal means. You will be a parent. That will happen. We knew that. But in the moment, it's very hard. It's like that, knowing that my daughter was at the end of the corridor, but at the same time seeing a future where my pregnancy had been taken away, my time had been taken away, my moment had gone. Logically that the two things, can exist, but you just can't put them together. You can't get your brain working the right way because there is just that. I think my biological clock had basically been wound too tight and it was just overflowing. Just give me the baby.
And as the doctor was trying to say,
And the doctor said, just relax.
because it's overclocked.
Just relax. It was well and truly, well and truly.
Oh, in that instance, because we could honestly talk for so long about this topic, and I think it's important that if people really want to holler at you, then so be it. If not, we definitely got to get you back on here again. Because I think that there is a lot of stigma, and no one really talks about pregnancy, what the possibilities are. There going to be complications throughout
Yeah,
pregnancy
absolutely.
for so many various reasons. But I think, to summarize, because I'm very conscious of time now, it's the fact that you went through that, you felt a certain way, you've explained how, and we've obviously highlighted how someone can say the right things, but it may not be the right time to say those things. At the time, it's probably clear to see that you wasn't in a good place.
No.
Looking back now at the beautiful child that you have, what would you say that has taught you? Because it didn't break you, thankfully.
No. I
But
think
what would you call it if it's not an L?
I have to say, I think it's basically taught me that I'd gone through life just anticipating that things would happen the way that I saw it. And it has taught me that nothing is ever going to be the way you think it's going to be exactly. You may get a portion of that bliss that you're hoping for, and that bliss may reshape itself into something else. And that bliss may be bigger than you expected. And, it may be too much, but nothing is ever going to be exactly what you want or exactly what you imagine. And that's okay, because, we came away so much more resilient from it. The two of us, we came away, with this understanding of how damn lucky we were to come away at all from that situation. I think, I think not knowing that I was nearly dead was kind of a good thing. I think had somebody told me that, it would have been a very, very stressful time. But no, I think finding out afterwards, it made both of us realize quite how precious what we had was. And that though it didn't work out the way we wanted, it didn't look the way we wanted, it was, full stop. And I think, I just feel so genuinely blessed to have walked away from that hospital with a child. That's what it comes down to, I think. That reminds me that I'm literally getting something I probably don't deserve. That's probably it.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. So if you was to then go back in time to the peak of despair, what would you told yourself, knowing now what you would like to have known then?
It's the same thing I do now. I go onto Instagram and I go onto the Bliss website, and every time they have a post with a parent who's struggling, or every time they say, what would you say to a NICU mum if you're an ex-NICU mum yourself, I go in there and I say to them, it's not what you wanted, and I know that, and I'm sorry it's not what you wanted, but you're here, and if your child is here with you, this is a start. But there is no place for the guilt that you're holding. There's no place for it in NICU. There's no room for guilt in NICU. There's only love, there's only hope, and there is only togetherness, and that's what you have. You rely on those nurses to tell you what to do, but you must rely on yourself to know there's no place for guilt. Because we were kind of, I ruined the pregnancy. I ruined this situation, and I didn't look after myself properly, and I deserve this. This is on me because.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help. It gives you nothing. It gives you no strength. It gives you no energy to go forward. You have to just have hope. You have to just have that love that you are feeling for that child or those children. or those people in that moment around you. And you have to kind of throw that guilt away and say, there's no time for you. I don't have time for you right now. I'm too
Yeah.
busy feeling love. And that's it. I would go back to that woman and say to her, you didn't do this. Nobody deserves this. This is what it is. Be
Yeah.
in the moment. Be with that baby. Come home. Look after yourself. Go back in. That's it. I think I couldn't have made her feel better, but I think I would have just maybe tried to tell her it wasn't her fault.
And that's something I was going to ask you because, like we
Mm.
established, your husband had said all the right things,
Mm,
but it just didn't make it better.
absolutely.
So, do you think then, if you could go back in time and say those things, do you think you would have been in a place to receive that information and for it to helpfully
I
help you
think
to make a positive turn in your mood,
to
in your
some
attitude?
degree, yeah. I think maybe because the bliss volunteer more or less said something similar to me, and she said, we're all here in the same place, and look at these mums, look at these dads, look at these parents, look at these people. We're all here in the same place, and we're all here for the same reason, and we've got to get through this. And we're going to get through this. And every time you see a post about babies, it's always hashtag Preemie strong,
Yeah,
hashtag Preemie warrior, because it's not just the baby who is the warrior, it's the parent, and the
yeah.
parent who's getting through that. I think if I'd been able to go in and hashtag Preemie warrior myself, I might have felt slightly better. I might just told myself to go away, to be honest, because I wasn't in a place to listen. But it's taught me that it's okay. It's okay to feel that. It's okay to do it. Like that woman on the phone said to me, it's okay to be sad.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to live in that love, and you have to get on with that love. So I think we definitely have. I mean, I squeeze her so often, I'm afraid her eyes are going to pop out sometimes.
Oh, that's a bit worrying.
She's so cute, though. I have to.
Well, that's nice. Glad to see she takes after your husband and not you.
Oh, dang. That was a burn.
It was. But no, I truly appreciate you sharing that, and I think you were so eloquent in how you presented the information, and it's so.
Thank you.
I I I don't want to seem like I am just literally like geeing you up for no apparent reason, but I
I'm
honestly
good with
think
that.
that I just think that my platform is not the biggest platform, but if nothing else, if I was to go and leave behind what I have, I've
Mhm.
helped share stories that people are gonna hold on to and say, you know what, you're right. It's not what I wanted,
Mm.
but it is what it is, and it's okay to feel what I'm
Yeah.
feeling. That again, I've used a movie analogy before. Inside it's a great movie, and it talks about the
Mm.
different emotions you have, and some people can look back on a memory fondly, and in another
Yes.
part of their life they look back at it in sadness, and
Yeah.
sadness is not a bad feeling. It's
Yeah.
just part
Yeah.
of life, just like how winter is part of life, summer's part of life, fall is part
Exactly.
of life. It's with an autumn, and all these components make up what we know is our reality. And
Mm.
sometimes, and I'm not going to go into it now, but you and I spoke about how my reality was shifted recently,
Mm.
and I call it grieving.
Yeah.
I call it grieving, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of us have grieved. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities between the change curve and the grieving curve
Yeah.
because it's technically it's
It's
both
the same
sides of the
thing.
same. It
It's the
is
same thing. Yeah.
because are you willing to accept that
It's a
change?
shifted reality.
It is
Yeah.
because we're creatures of patterns and habits, and if things don't suddenly fall into that way we've designed it to be,
We
we're
can't
like,
cope with it.
I can't compute. Oh my gosh, error 404. I can't compute. I refresh F5.
Reboot.
It is.
Reboot.
Hold the power button
Reboot.
down.
Start
It
again.
is. Is it
Ah.
plugged in? And that's how we are. But I think people like you, people like all the other guests I've had on so far, just sharing the rawness of your life. This is pulling back the veils
Mm.
and letting people know from the outside looking in, I look like I'm holding it together quite tight. Trust me, you don't understand. I got paper clips holding that together. That's duct tape. That's no more nails. That's whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
I am probably one negative comment
Mm.
away from falling apart. But
Mm.
you are there sharing your stories, letting people know, and definitely for those that are trying to conceive, those that are
Yeah.
probably going through similar situations. I'm assuming there's probably some mums out there who have gone
Mm.
through something that you've gone through, but
Mm.
never identify or never let go of that guilt that they've been
Yes.
holding on to. And they may never
Yeah.
known about bliss or organization like that, or felt the
Yeah.
value in talking to them. But by you sharing what you share, that's given them the ability to know that there is support out there for them. There is
Yeah.
no shame in feeling what you feel, because
No, no,
it's
absolutely.
normal. Why have feelings if you can't experience them?
Yeah, exactly.
And, when I was going through depression, I didn't feel feelings. I just felt numbness.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act. It's very hard. But this platform is all about just letting you know that we all go through struggles. And I've said it multiple times. Your right now is not your forever.
Yes.
One of my favorite phrases at the minute is, nothing about a caterpillar tells you it's going to be a butterfly. So just hold on to that and just know that what you're seeing now, what you're experiencing right now, isn't necessarily a bad thing. And also, if we want to go another analogy further, horse manure is the best fertilizer ever. So when you feel like it's hit the fan and
Oh,
you're
that's an
really in it,
attractive image.
I took it there. I took it there. But when you think that life is really just hit,
You definitely grow the best veg with it. So
mate, come on. So when you're in the thick of it and you're cussing it because you say, this ain't the greenest over here, it is. Just let it marinate for a little bit. Let the sun come out a while. Let the rain come
let
your
the
way.
mushrooms grow.
Yeah, come on now. And the next thing you know, you got a little bit of grass over there. Over here, you've got an allotment growing. You got everything growing. And this is what people don't understand. You never meet a strong person with an easy pass.
Yes.
This is what
Yeah.
I
It's
told
how
you.
you learn to be strong. It is. It's how
Told you.
you learn to be strong.
I
So
told you. I've got analogies for days. It is what it
my
is.
husband's favorite is it's something along to do something to do with the ends. So it's something to do with he keeps repeating it. It was from one of the radio programs,
He
and
keeps
it was,
repeating it. You
it'll be
can't
all right
remember it.
in the end. It'll be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, it's not the end. And I love that. I
Very
love
true.
the potential for that.
Very true.
It was one of his favorite phrases from his favorite tutor, who kind of made him. It's the person who made him want to become a teacher. A guy called Dave Ferraro, who taught in the Henley College. If it'll be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end. I love that. I
That
love
is
that.
beautiful. I might have to borrow that for future episode.
It's not copyright. You're okay.
That's all right. You can't copyright phrase anyway. So, if people would like to engage with you, where can they find you?
Realistically, I am on Instagram, but that's like it, because I'm an old person. So I don't have any other, exciting forms of technology. I'm literally on Instagram. I'm talking Cyberman. I'm very friendly. Because I'm a teacher, my Instagram is open to my students, and I am, I'm there to talk to them. Obviously, I don't direct message chat generally, unless it's something that, I feel safe doing. But I tend to share stuff from people like the Bliss group, and a wonderful podcaster also, obviously other than yourself,
Oh,
called Amber, who runs a podcast called The Grief Gang, and The Grief Case is kind of an offshoot of that. And it also features, people who have lost pregnancies or lost children. And it's kind of a way of kind of bringing people together and talking about those feelings and those emotions. So I kind of share that information on there. I share a lot of kind of human rights stuff and things like that. But, unless you're going to become a student at the Henley College, which, most people, you have to be 16 to do that. So other than that, that's me, basically. That's, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody if they wanted to talk about it, because I don't think there is enough discussion around these issues for women. There's not enough discussion about what if. 2 pages of what if in a book about pregnancy, it doesn't cover any of the myriad things that can happen along the way that nobody anticipates and no one's ready for.
yeah.
So it needs to be discussed and it needs to be pushed. I didn't push enough when I was younger with my GPs. I didn't get diagnosed with endometriosis until I tried to conceive, by which time it could have been too late for me. So it's something that we have to keep talking about. We have to keep, women particularly will be told if they feel something, yeah, that's expected. You have very complicated plumbing, things are going to happen. But if you know your body, you know when your mind isn't right, you know when your body isn't right too. And I wish I had done something sooner regarding the preeclampsia. I wish I had pushed for a second opinion. I wish I'd done all of this. I mean, what ifs are no good, but if I can help somebody else not go through that, that would be wonderful. That would be.
That's really nice, and that's very honest of yourself. And I hope that you now enjoy your life and embrace your life with so much fondness and appreciation.
An enormous amount of caffeine.
That too, um, because I don't want to tell anyone what to do, but I would encourage people to just take off the glasses, the rose tinted glasses, and stop thinking that the world's against you or that you alone have been dealt a series of cards that are unplayable. Make it work. Just make it work, because you will never have an idea of what someone else is going through until you have a conversation with them. And that's what I'm opening up and doing here. A lot of my guests I do have conversations with. A lot of my guests I won't have long-term conversations with. But one thing we have in common is that I know that effectively we're all broken. and we're all willing to talk about it.
Beautifully broken.
Beautifully broken. That's what part of the
Absolutely.
thing that makes us unique. But at the same time, what makes us unique also makes us relatable to one another, because we've all got a chink in our armor at some point, somewhere. So, people, be encouraged. Reach out to Hannah, because she's absolutely a fantastic individual who's just got a beautiful mind, a beautiful personality, and just an all-round, just someone who I'll be happy to align myself with because of how she conducts herself. So much love to you and your family, and I do appreciate you jumping on the podcast with me. We're definitely going to try and get you on another time if possible. So as you notice, we never got to the second L that Hannah wanted to talk about, but that's because we went into so much depth about her first L, which I cannot understate how appreciative I am of her sharing it, being so candid and open and honest about it all, because I think there are a lot of people that would have learned something from that conversation. And I hope that it gives you the hope, the encouragement to know that your situation right now is not your forever place. If you know someone else that's going through this, please share it with them so they know they're not alone. And hopefully the words that were shared to her on the charity will also encourage them. So a big shout out to the charity. I hope that they understand how the volunteers they have and the organisation they run, the major impact it has on other people's lives. So my hope has always been that this podcast will help enlighten and encourage those that listen to it through the stories of other people sharing what they've gone through and where they're at today after enduring it. So if I can ask you to leave a review, or if you want to listen to this on Apple Podcasts, or rank it on Spotify or whatever platform you listen to, just so that other people can have a chance of finding it and hopefully be encouraged. So saying that, I look forward to catching you in the next episode. Take care.
Every L podcast. Every L podcast. Every L podcast. Every L podcast.